Walking connects us to the glorious world around us, which we so often lose touch with in our busy everyday lives. It's good for our health and lifts the spirits like nothing else.
That is the most incredible view I've ever seen.
More and more people are feeling the benefits of this simplest form of relaxation.
Walking is about getting fit in body, mind and soul.
Being in nature gives me such a sense of the sacred.
And in this series, we're going to be joining them.
I'm Marine Baig.
And I'm JB Gill.
Come join us as we celebrate the joy, wisdom and beauty to be found not only in Britain's incredible religious spaces.
There's something really special when you enter a place like this.
But in its people as well.
You're really casting everything else away, all the problems of the day.
It's so important for our well-being.
If you're mindful and spend time in the present moment, then you'll have a much richer life.
We'll be discovering Britain's hidden cultural and historical treasures.
Imagine what this would have been like in its former glory. Unreal.
And unearthing an array of special places that can bring peace and spiritual fulfillment.
Dartmoor is my temple. Dartmoor is my cathedral.
No matter where you live, there's some trail or route you can walk. So put on your walking boots, put your best foot forward.
As we embark on some walks of life. Today, I'm heading into the heart of Dartmoor, a magical ancient place that became one of Britain's first national parks in 1951. It's known for its granite-strewn moors, boggy wetlands and unique wildlife like the famous Dartmoor pony. It's home to the infamous Dartmoor prison and overflowing with stories of moral ambiguity and desperation.
The prison was put here in the middle of nowhere, and for a lot of people coming up here it would be a big shock to the system.
My walk will take me across a landscape unlike any I've seen before. Though barren and desolate, it still manages to be spiritually uplifting.
For me, Dartmoor is my temple. Dartmoor is my cathedral, whatever you want to call it. So when I'm here, I'm totally at peace.
The area is filled with treacherous peat bogs, and I'll be walking over land where many travellers have lost their direction, and even their lives.
When I was 16, I went onto the moors, and I sank up to here.
Really?
Yeah, all by myself, and literally had to get on my belly and crawl out.
But I'll discover that maintaining these dangerous death traps is absolutely vital for our environment.
So there's about 10 million tonnes of carbon stored in the peat bogs of Dartmoor. If the peat dries out, it starts to break down and release the carbon into the atmosphere as a greenhouse gas.
And finally, I'll visit sacred sites that show how Dartmoor is a land that has stirred the soul ever since the dawn of man.
We do know that they were very much in tune with the cycles of nature, the seasons. They potentially imbued natural places with a sense of reverence or the sacred.
Dartmoor's moorland is the largest open moor in southern England, and I've heard it's a place of remoteness and tranquility. Situated in the middle of Devon, it's an area of 400 square miles of outstanding natural beauty. I'll be walking a 12-mile route, starting and finishing in the area's highest village. The land here is famously poor, rocky and acidic, so being a farmer myself, I'm keen to find out not just how people survive here, but how they find peace of mind too. Well, this is it. The start of my walk is here in Princetown. The village was established in the late 1700s when a politician called Sir Thomas Tyrwhitt leased a large area of moorland from the Duchy of Cornwall. Realising the land couldn't be farmed for arable crops, Tyrwhitt found an alternative way to exploit its desolate location by building a prison to house French soldiers captured in the Napoleonic Wars. At 650,000 square feet, the prison dominates the landscape to this day. It's a huge, intimidating structure and has housed such notable inmates as Eamon de Valera and Mad Frankie Fraser. No longer maximum security, today it holds only low-category prisoners. I'm heading to St Michael's and All Angels Church, a place of huge historical significance to Dartmoor, its prison and the settlement that formed around it. I'm curious to know why such a big church was built in a place described as unquestionably the bleakest place in Devon. The stonework in itself is incredible. I can't wait to see what stories lie inside. I've read that it was constructed between 1812 and 1814, some 3 years after the prison itself, and both were built using local granite quarried on the moors. The first thing you notice as you walk in is the stunning stained glass window. But I'm here to meet Barbie and Trevor, two local historians, to find out how this incredible church came to be.
Yes, Barbie, nice to see you.
You too. Hello there. Hello, Trevor. Hello. This is a lovely place, isn't it?
It is.
Amazing church. How did it come to be here?
As far as we know, it's quite unique, as it was the only church that we know of built in England entirely by French and American prisoners of war.
Oh, wow.
And it was because of the prison and the prison guards and the militia that looked after the prisoners and needed somewhere to worship.
And it was the French prisoners who first worked building the church. And as the French war ended in 1814, all the Frenchmen were repatriated, but by that time they were American prisoners here from the War of 1812. And they also were given the opportunity to finish the job.
And tell me about the significance of this stained glass window.
Oh, you can't help but notice it. It's wonderful, isn't it? Now, that was actually installed in 1910, and this was thanks to a group of women in the United States, the National Society of the United States Daughters of 1812.
The window itself is in memory of the American prisoners who died in Dartmoor. There were 271 of them killed. Mostly in 1814, there was a smallpox epidemic.
Were any of the prisoners of war buried here?
No. But there are Dartmoor prison-related memorial stones here in the churchyard, mostly prison officers.
Oh, wow.
And one in particular is of special interest.
Can we go and have a look?
Yes, of course.
Hey.
Trevor tells me that as well as building the church, prisoners were put to work in the quarry from which the granite was sourced.
And whose grave is this?
This grave is in memory of Mr. George Palmer, and this gentleman was a regular guard at the quarry for many years. This particular boulder was one he sat on for a rest.
Yeah, delivered his orders.
Absolutely. When he died, his colleagues, they bought that piece of stone from the quarry, moved it here as a headstone for him. Very appropriately, I think you'd agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just can't imagine doing hard labour in all weathers out on the moor. Yet, according to Trevor, the men imprisoned here still managed to maintain their sense of humanity.
There is a story concerning prisoners who had a great respect for the man who guarded them. And this was borne out in what could have been a tragic incident. He was conducting a works party out on the moor, and for some reason he became quite overcome and he collapsed, and they thought he'd had a heart attack, and they picked him up, they carried him all the way back to the prison, and every single prisoner fell in behind and marched back to the prison. They could have escaped, but that's just an indication of their respect for him.
Absolutely.
Great story.
I'm amazed by this selfless act, but perhaps there was something in this harsh landscape that bonded guards and prisoners together. Next, I'm heading a few hundred yards back into Princetown to a place where prisoners who didn't work the quarry were put to work in a different way. This land surrounding the prison was once Dartmoor Prison Farm, which offered the prisoners rehabilitation through gaining skills in agriculture. The hope was that this would help them get work when they were finally released into society. It definitely seems like a strange place for a farm. I mean, it's kind of eerie standing here, to be honest, because there's just one wall. It doesn't quite seem high enough, separating me from the inmates. You can even hear their conversations. My guidebook says farming started here in 1852. Due to the terrain, it's always focused on livestock and animal husbandry, something I'm trying to master myself on my own farm. Maybe I can pick up some tips. There we go, you can hear the sound of the farm animals. That is the prison, and this is the farm. It's very, very close. Apparently, until 1992, the prison service ran the third largest farming operation in the country. But since then, most of the farms have slowly but surely been sold off. This one is now owned by hill farmer Neil Cole. Hello, Neil. Good to see you.
And you.
Do you know anything about the history of this farm?
Everything that was produced on either this prison farm or any of the other prison farms was always kept within the prisons. So they used it all to, you know, feed the prisoners.
The prisoners worked the farm as well as getting produce from it, didn't they?
Yeah, definitely. They had the farm. They also had the working quarry. And ironically, when they closed the quarry, apparently the prisoners were absolutely gutted because they used to love to get in there with sledgehammers and beat the heck out of a few granite stones and whatever else. And they were quite upset when they couldn't go in there anymore.
So I'm guessing historically, most of those prisoners would have been working this land for the first time, wouldn't they?
Yeah. I mean, the prison was put here in that day and age because it was in the middle of nowhere, and for a lot of people coming up here in a horse and cart, it'd be a big shock to the system.
And I'm guessing that you don't have any real close dealings with the prison now?
No more than what they yell at me out the windows.
Really? You get heckled, do you?
It can be quite entertaining sometimes.
Are you worried living next door to the prison, perhaps of inmates escaping?
Not in this day and age, and in the last 10, 12 years since we've been up here, we've never had any issues with them.
So what's it like farming here?
On a day like this, absolutely fantastic. Yeah, good old-fashioned hill farming way of life. You have to learn to farm with the weather, the land, the soil, and the right animals.
Well, if you've got a bit of work to do, I'm quite happy to help.
Yeah, well, we've got to go up on the hill and get one of the lot of ewes down to go through for draft ewes, so you can jump on a quad bike and work a dog. Jump in.
Less of the dog, but more of the quad bike. Let's do it.
Right on.
Who needs sheepdogs when you can use these bad boys to round up your herd? I farm poultry and pigs myself, but if sheep farming is this fun, maybe I'm in the wrong business.
We're going to go up around, come down, bring all the sheep down and in through this gate.
I've toured the world and performed in front of millions, but there's nothing quite like this. Corralling sheep on a 4x4 in the glorious sunshine. There we go, easy as that. But our work is not yet done. Some Dartmoor ponies have followed the sheep down from the hill, so we need to round them up and head them back into the fields. Well, that was my first time drifting ponies. How did I do?
Yeah, not too bad. I can see you getting enthusiastic there.
Are the horses unique to Dartmoor?
Well, yeah, they go back to prehistoric times. You know, they've been used for pit ponies, shepherd's ponies, grazing ponies, pack ponies, and over the years evolved into the Dartmoor pony.
And these ones you own? These aren't the wild
Oh, they're
ones,
all owned. All the ponies on the moors are owned.
Oh, okay.
They all have brands, so we can identify them. Some have microchips.
But they're just out on the moor?
Yeah, we bring them in once a year to give them a health check, whatever else. Your work's done for the day now, JB. Back for a pint of jail ale in the pub, innit?
The idea of chewing the cud with Neil at his local certainly sounds tempting. But unless I still want to be out on the moors at midnight, I need to crack on.
Thank you for your help.
Not at all. Thank you very much.
I think the dogs appreciate an extra pair of hands.
Yeah, well, I'll have to love you and leave you guys.
Back to walking.
Exactly. All the best.
Bye. Do you want to go for a little ride?
Although the sun is shining, the forecast is for rain. And sure enough, as I head out towards the moor itself, dark clouds start to descend. My first impression of the landscape is how endlessly bleak and foreboding it seems. The moorland stretches out into the distance with no hint of civilization, giving it an eerie, almost mystical quality. This is a place where it's impossible not to become lost in your own thoughts, yet you can't allow your mind to wander for too long. The heavy rainfall here can turn the ground into hazardous bogs and mires, so I'll need to pay attention and stay on the paths as I go. To keep me on the straight and narrow, I'm being joined for the first stage of my walk by local historian Pip Barker. We quickly encounter the long, straight road which leads you away from Princetown. A road whose construction, it turns out, represents an extraordinary statement of spiritual strength and moral resolve.
We're coming up onto the start of Conscientious Road. It's otherwise known in the village as the Road to Nowhere.
Okay.
It was built by the Conscientious Objectors between the period 1917 and 1919. So these people were pacifists who had deep religious beliefs about fighting. And so what happened is that they refused to fight. Now the government took some of them to France originally and sentenced them to death. And then the government decided to stop that and commuted it to 10 years hard labour. The idea was to put them into prisons. The prison then was called Princetown Work Centre. And the idea was for people to go there to do work of national importance, breaking rocks, making this road, digging ditches, bringing the fields under control.
Manual labour.
Manual labour. And they had to work on this road 5.5 days a week.
What types of people were the Conscientious Objectors?
They were from all walks of life. They were people who had Quaker beliefs, they were Methodists, they were chapel people, and they would not do anything to help the war effort.
So why is it called the Road to Nowhere?
Because it just stops and then there's just fields and grass around it. It stopped because they hadn't finished it by the time that the war came to the end and they were released. Yeah. Now this road itself was built from granite, which is taken from the quarry at the prison. So they had to wheel that in carts from the prison the way here with the granite in it.
Wow. Were their conditions good?
A lot of the men here were labourers, so they were used to a bit more of the hard work, but there were other people here who suffered, those that had to come up this road. It's cold now. Imagine what it was like in Christmas time, pulling the carts, picking up granite. 2 in fact died. 1 actually died whilst working on this road. Several others died at later events. Quite a few died in the early 1920s from some of the problems they had here. So if you look back that way, you'll see that's the way we've come from the prison. The prison's probably about 2 miles from here. We've got another probably 2 miles to walk. And you can imagine 1,100 men may have come out on this road because that was the number that people were in the prison, and how they hated it.
Yeah.
They absolutely hated it.
Well, it really is the road to nowhere.
It is.
Though it's cloudy, the scenery is captivating, and as I leave Pip, I start to appreciate why so many people have fallen under the spell of this dramatic landscape and its hidden secrets. Mind you, some secrets can be unlocked with a bit of research, so I'm pleased I've done my reading in advance. This is elite. They've been in use on Dartmoor since medieval times. There are hundreds of these waterways across the moors, and they were designed to carry water from a source by gravity to provide power for local industries. This particular lead goes all the way into Plymouth to provide power for the dock. They're an amazing piece of ingenuity. I head south for a couple of miles, aiming for a place known as Peat Hill. And wouldn't you know it, just before I arrive, the clouds part and the sun makes a welcome return. Being alone on the moor certainly gives you time to think and gather your thoughts. It's so easy to feel small in such an isolated place, and with weather conditions that can change in a heartbeat, this truly is a spectacular place. Here, it seems, nature is at its best. Someone who knows a thing or two about trekking through these moors is Satish Kumar. He's lived here for over 40 years and considers it the perfect place to practice the ancient Indian religion of Jainism. Jainists believe every living thing is of equal value and should be treated with respect and compassion. Satish, how did you end up living here?
Oh, it's a long story. I always walked as a Jain monk. And I walked through India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, former Soviet Union, to Moscow.
Wow.
And then I walked through Europe to Paris. Then I came to London. And then a friend was coming to Dartmoor. And she said, this is the gem in England. And that very day, first time when I came to Dartmoor, I fell in love.
Wow.
And I said, I want to walk Dartmoor as a pilgrim. For me, nature is my religion. And if you read any book or any great poetry, it's always inspired by nature. So I am always inspired by Dartmoor. Because for me, Dartmoor is my temple. Dartmoor is my cathedral, whatever you want to call it. It's a religious, spiritual significance. This is the most beautiful, magical place. So when I'm here, I'm totally at peace.
And does the walking help your perspective?
Walking is the only way to learn from Dartmoor. You see the flowers, wild flowers, you see the plants, you see the rocks, you see the stone, you see the trees. You see that wild nature of Dartmoor absolutely intimately. Your heart, your mind, your body, all connected. We are nature. Nature is not just Dartmoor. Humans are also nature. So it's a kind of Dartmoor, and walking on Dartmoor becomes a metaphor for life.
Well, we've done quite a bit of walking already, haven't we? So maybe we can try and sit down over here. Satish tells me that the essence of Jainism is a concern for the welfare of every being in the universe, and ultimately for the health of the universe itself. There we go.
What a magnificent view of open moor.
It is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's amazingly unbelievable.
I mean, I find it impossible to be somewhere like this and not appreciate nature.
Exactly.
It's impossible. I mean, even the clouds creating a shadow on the moors.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
But the one thing which I find being here is the intrinsic value of nature. Because quite often humans think that the value of nature is only in terms of nature's usefulness to humans. But here, nature is not necessarily useful to human. I want to say that nature is not a source for the economy. Nature is a source of life.
Do you believe that nature is the highest power?
What we say God is not somebody, a person behind the clouds controlling the world. That is not God for me. God is that energy which holds everything together. And that energy is nature. That is, to me, is divine power. God is that principle of nature. So nature is the supreme power.
And would you meditate here?
Of course. I come to Dartmoor to meditate. We can meditate here, now.
Well, yeah, if you show me what you do.
Yes, okay. Let's do it.
Meditation is used to forget all worldly dilemmas, so that the mind can achieve peace and the soul can be set free.
To meditate on Dartmoor, we sit somewhere, very peaceful, and then first of all we bring our both palms together and we bow to Dartmoor. Then we put our both hands on our knees and make a circle with the index finger and the thumb.
So index finger and thumb?
Yeah. So this mandala represents the cycle of time and the cycle of life, and also symbolizes the sun, the moon, the earth, and ourselves. We are all connected. Now in the relaxed body, calm mind, peaceful heart, we just sit paying attention to our breath. And when we breathe in and breathe out, we are aware that all living beings upon this earth, humans and other than humans, are sustained by the same breath of life. And then I also chant mantra. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Shanti in Sanskrit means peace. So we make peace in our heart, with ourselves. We make peace with other people. And we make peace with nature. And then I also do a prayer. And I also resolve in my heart that may I think my thoughts, speak my words, and perform my actions throughout the day with awareness, with mindfulness, with heartfulness, so that my life becomes a long meditation. To conclude the meditation, we put our both hands together and bow to the sacred earth, sacred life, sacred universe. And in gratitude for all the gifts of life that we receive every day. And with that gratitude, I conclude the meditation.
I can definitely see how sitting here and being quiet and just meditating, taking in the surroundings and becoming more one with nature can be beneficial for the soul and for the mind, no matter what you believe.
Yeah. Cool. Very nice meeting you and walking with you, and maybe we go a little bit more walk.
Absolutely. Well, I definitely have to do some more walking, but
yes, wonderful.
Thank you very much
Wonderful.
For your time.
Okay, pleasure, yeah.
I thought that was completely inspiring. My beliefs may be Christian, but the simple elegance of Satish's words really struck a chord.
After speaking with Satish, you can really see why it's important to be connected to nature. And his meditation techniques really do bring that sense of belonging, that sense of oneness with nature. And I, for one, really appreciate it. I mean, it's something that I've always done. I've always tried to get outside and appreciate it. But being here really does bring it closer to home.
While Satish gets spiritual inspiration from this landscape, artists have been using it to evoke emotions for centuries. And there's one depiction of this place which has perhaps most caught the public's imagination.
In The Hound of the Baskervilles, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle writes, "It was a wonderful place, the moor," said he, looking round over the undulating downs. Long green rollers with crests of jagged granite foaming up into fantastic surges. You never tire of the moor. You cannot think the wonderful secrets which it contains. It is so vast and so barren and so mysterious.
One of only 4 full-length Sherlock Holmes novels Conan Doyle ever wrote, it's the tale of a diabolical beast that roams the moor. And as the clouds start to roll in again, I can definitely see why he thought this was such a perfectly threatening location. I've never been a fan of scary stories, so I'm glad to have the company of local tour guide Paul Rendell for the next leg of my walk. Even if he does seem keen to wind me up with talk of ghosts and ghoulies.
In Hound of the Baskervilles, This is described as quite a foreboding place, isn't it? Is that how you feel when you're here?
Well, not really, no. I just love the place because it can be spooky, it can be scary. One part of Dartmoor, not far from here, it's supposed to be haunted by a pair of hairy hands that grabs the steering wheel of your car and pulls you into the ditch. But it relates back to a story in the 1860s of a man working in a gunpowder factory nearby. And there was an explosion and the man died and his hands got blown off from the rest of his body.
Oh, wow.
And we think it's those hands that's supposed to come along there and scare people on the road.
For me, walking here, it seems like it's quite difficult to navigate. Surely it's impossible for most people.
For me, it's easy. I've done it all my life. I walked up here and I walk in the mist, I walk at night.
At night?
At night, oh yeah, I do night walks. If you get full moon, you don't need a torch.
Well, yeah, I can appreciate that, but I mean, there's not a light for literally miles.
No, there isn't, no, but lots of people can get lost. It's so easy to get lost. You've seen the mist come down.
Well, you can definitely get a sense that there are hidden parts to this moor that you wouldn't know unless you quite literally just stumbled across them.
No, but Dartmoor is a very dangerous place, you know. Even though I say I love Dartmoor, but I've been scared at one time. When I was 16, I went out to the moors and I sank up to here.
Really?
Yeah, all by myself. Being male, I could get out of here, can I? I thought. It took me 20 minutes to get out. And I literally had to get on my belly and crawl out. And I was stinking because the bogs are decomposing vegetation.
But it just looks so tame. I don't know, you get a full sense of security, I guess.
You can quite easily, yes.
As the sky turns ever darker, I'm feeling more and more uneasy because my next pit stop is an area of wetlands 2 miles further south, notorious for its hidden bogs.
So where are we going now then?
Well, I'm heading over to Foxtor Mire.
That place?
Don't say that.
Wow, nearby, many years ago, I was camping out on the moors here, and about 2:30 in the morning, I had to get at the tent. So I got at the tent, and there in the distance there was all these little blue flashing lights, all above the ground.
Police cars?
No, it wasn't. It was much smaller. It was over a bog, it was, like this. I eventually, later on, found out it was methane gas coming out of the peat bogs and setting light, because it gets so hot. So we just caught there and all these blue flames. Really scary.
Tell me about it. Are you happy to accompany me over there?
Yes, I think so, yes.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
So if I came out here, as I have done, and was walking, would I need to get a guide like you, or
you don't necessarily need a guide, but it's safer. There's footpaths here that tells you where you can go. And if you look at the map, it will tell you where some of the wet bits are, dangerous bits. But if you want to learn the history or be safe, it's best to go with a guide.
Of course.
Like myself, yeah.
This moor's got a spirit of its own, hasn't it?
Oh, definitely.
I'm pleased Paul's with me, but he's certainly keeping me on my toes.
Are there other animals out here other than the sheep and the cattle?
Yes, there's deer, and I think there's a wild cat or a beast.
Really?
I've never actually seen it, but I've seen a sheep that's been killed by a big paw the size of my hand.
Oh, wow.
So it's bigger than a lynx or a wild cat. It's more likely a plumer, and they've ripped it to pieces. So I'm convinced there is a wild beast. Hopefully not around here watching us now.
I hope so.
No, that's right. Think we should put our waterproofs on now?
Yeah, well, I mean, the rain's coming in pretty heavy, isn't it?
Yeah. So.
Oh no, I've forgotten it.
Have you?
No, I'm only joking. Could you imagine? All right, here we go.
Yeah.
By now, I'm very aware of how changeable the Dartmoor weather is and how you must always be prepared for the worst.
Maybe in a few minutes' time we'll take them off again because it will stop raining.
That's
just Dartmoor for you.
Suited and booted.
Yes.
Come on then, let's go.
Yep.
They say there's no such thing as bad weather, only unsuitable clothing, so I'm pleased I packed properly.
Oh, the mire's just over there. You should be all right now, do you think?
Yeah, I think I can get there safely by myself.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
That's okay, fine, great. Well,
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, okay.
And look out for the beast.
I think it's that way. That's why I'm going this way. Bye.
I'm now about 10 minutes from Foxtor Mire, and if I keep to the track, I'll get there safely, assuming I can keep sight of where I'm going.
The weather here on the moor has really turned now. You can see the rain quite literally sweeping across this wide open space. It's not quite misty, so they've still got visibility, but it's very wet. And they've still got quite a bit of walking to do. At least I can keep warm by walking.
And lo and behold, just as Paul predicted it would, after a few minutes the rain starts to die away.
As I'm walking out here, I can feel the ground under my feet start to change. It's a lot wetter. It's a lot more unstable as well, so I think we must be getting near to the mire.
While stories of ravenous wild beasts may be the stuff of fantasy, I've been told there's a very real environmental danger in these moors. The deterioration of Dartmoor's huge areas of peat bog. The government have invested heavily in a 3-year project to protect the peatland. So to find out why it's such a major concern, I've arranged to meet one of the leading scientists working out here, David Leach.
Hello.
Hi.
What are you up to?
Well, I'm trying to get a peat sample out of this, because what we stood on here is one of Dartmoor's big areas of peat bog.
And what exactly is peat?
Peat forms in very wet conditions. So over thousands of years, the plant material is just too wet for the bacteria that normally break vegetation down and turn it into soil. So what you get is this build-up of unrotted plant material, black peat.
David tells me that this black peat absorbs huge amounts of carbon dioxide from the air.
So there's about 10 million tonnes of carbon stored in the peat bogs of Dartmoor.
Oh wow.
And that's, if we manage to keep them wet and good sort of condition peat, that's where it'll stay. If the peat dries out, it starts to break down and release the carbon into the atmosphere as a greenhouse gas.
So we want to keep the peat bogs,
We want to keep the peat bogs wet, yes.
Yeah. And how important is that for the world?
Well, it's important because the amount of carbon that's locked up in Dartmoor's peat bogs is about equivalent to the entire UK emissions for 1 year from UK industry.
Really?
And we've got to keep that in the ground. And what we want to do is to try and do some restoration and re-wet the peat and get it back into good condition. And we've already done some trial restorations, and we've managed to raise the water table by an average of 9 centimetres across the site. Now, if you think about that, that's a whole lot of water we'll be locking up and storing to release slowly into the system.
In days gone by, this peat would have been dried out and used for fuel. But now, keeping it wet is the order of the day. And the plant life that grows here has a key role to play.
This one's a kind of sphagnum moss.
Yeah.
Now this is the real core component of peat bogs. This is the plant that really drives the production of peat. These are really important for water supply. So if you talk to South West Water, they'll tell you that about 45% of their daily water supply for households falls as rain on Dartmoor. Now what these peat bogs do is they store some of that water and release it slowly as clean water into the system. And you can see, if you get a handful of this sphagnum moss,
oh wow,
it does hold rather a lot of water.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just running out of there, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So is it safe to walk out here on these bogs?
Well, I would definitely be cautious, especially at certain times of year. So here we're really on the edge of the bog. If you head in that direction, it gets much wetter and much deeper peat. So if you get onto the sphagnum, you can see the whole thing wobbles up and down. There's almost a soup of peat under this, and it's the mat of vegetation that's holding us up.
But this is just on the edge of the bog, so what happens when you go further in there?
I'd think twice about going in there without proper equipment, without someone knowing where I was. I would avoid going in pools like this too often.
So fascinating. I had no idea that any of this was either important or even here. So thank you very much for enlightening me.
Thank you. Cheers. Okay.
The peat bog's are another one of Dartmoor's secrets. You look at it and it's like they don't even exist. But once you get in amongst it, you realise how vitally important and significant they are. And we really do need to protect them.
It's another 4 miles to the southernmost point of my walk, the prehistoric Drizzlecombe Stone Rose, one of Dartmoor's most significant religious sites. It should take me about an hour and a bit, particularly as once again the weather is looking up.
We've got bright sunshine, and it was overcast just a second ago.
So many people are drawn to Dartmoor. Its landscape creates spiritual harmony. Its isolation creates mystique and mystery, and its ever-changing climate creates vistas which are endlessly stunning. I've read that in recent years, Steven Spielberg chose this old cottage, Ditsworthy Warren House, as the location for the opening scenes of his film, Warhorse, saying, "I have never before, in my long and eclectic career, been gifted with such an abundance of natural beauty as I experienced filming Warhorse on Dartmoor." I'm not much of a snapper, but I'd love to find out how best to capture the beauty of this place on camera. So I've enlisted the help of celebrated photographer Juliet Mills. She's been working on a project here for the past 2 years called My Moor.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
So with the photography, what's so special about Dartmoor?
Well, we can all see it's a stunningly beautiful place, but the weather's so changeable, and that's what I like in images. I want the wind, I want the clouds, I want the changing light, the atmosphere. You have to spend some time here to feel it. I've been here, living here for 8 years. I've not scratched the surface at all.
So can I do some photography? Because my photography skills are not great, in my opinion, but I'd love to do some.
That's fine. You don't have to be technically skilled to take good pictures.
Perfect. Have you got a camera for me?
Yeah. There we go. Gonna be your beast.
Okay. Perfect.
So I was photographing this entrance with everything behind it. So you might want to focus on the stone here and then frame.
Okay.
And then just move the camera until it feels good and then take the picture.
Cool.
Oh, look. You can't take a bad shot here. Yeah, and you've got the tree in, the light, the dark. That's a pretty perfect picture, in my opinion.
I actually can't believe I've done that.
Well, what you really need to do is think more about what the place is making you feel and get that. So let's go in and get closer to some of the trees and wall, and there's a lot of light and shade and shapes. But then we've got the moor behind, framed by it all. So what I was going to try and show you was how nice it is just to see glimpses of the moor through the trees and through the wall. So I'm going to take one and you then have a go and we'll see. Now the sun's going in and out. See how changeable it is? Sometimes you just have to wait for a minute and then the shadows will come back. There we go. That's great. I like the close-up of the two trees.
But even in that short space of time, the sun's disappeared, and that's changed the shots. Does that always happen here?
Yes, you've got to be very patient because every minute the weather changes on the moor and every shot is different because of that. I photograph a lot of reflections on the rivers here. Every single day they're different because the light, the reflections from the trees, everything's changeable on the moor, and I think that's part of the magic of it. So what I think we should do is separate and you go off on your own for a minute and just see what pictures you can take. Do whatever you want and then I'm going to have a look in a minute and see what you come up with.
All right, I've been well instructed, so I should be fine. The creative bones in my body are really excited at the prospect of this. So here's to some amazing photos.
you've been doing. How did you get on?
Okay, I think.
So, look. Nice shadows from the trees. The light today couldn't be more perfect with the sun coming through on the hills behind. Ooh, that's a very nice one because it's framed by the trees above, and you've got the stones giving the atmosphere of the moor, and then the glimpses of the distant landscape.
I feel like when you're waiting for the weather, particularly while we've been doing this, you get lost in what you're trying to do.
Well, that's the lovely part of it, being out somewhere beautiful, forgetting the rest of the world, forgetting your worries, focused in on something specific.
It's really therapeutic.
That's lovely because you've just got a slither of the landscape framed by beautiful trees. That's really nice.
Well, I'd love to spend the whole day taking photos. I might have to come back and do it again, but I'll have to love and leave you.
Well, don't stop taking pictures just because you don't have a professional camera. Phones take great pictures. Keep your phone with you all the time, and I think you'll enjoy it. You've got a knack already.
Well, thank you very much, Juliet.
Really nice to meet you.
You take care.
I can see why Juliet loves spending time here, capturing the rugged wild beauty all around her. I can also understand why taking photographs in this timeless, ever-changing landscape gives you a spiritual connection with your environment.
This walking's quite hard work, so just stopping for a small snack to take in this view. I would say that it's quiet, but it's actually not. You can hear all the cows bellowing and the sheep baaing as well. You can hear the moor speaking to you, as it were. It's very peaceful.
I'm hoping to find out about the first communities who settled here, and before too long, I arrive at Drizzlecombe and get a glimpse of the religious monuments they left behind.
There we go. Look out in the distance there. You can see those stone pillars on the horizon. That's where I'm heading.
To learn what they are and how they got here, I'm meeting someone who studied these prehistoric ceremonial sites for years. She calls herself Dartmoor's daughter. She's happy for me to call her Emma.
Hi Emma. The son of Dartmoor has been beating down on my neck.
Glorious day to welcome you here to this amazing place.
So how long ago would these have been put here?
Well, we think they're early Bronze Age, which would have been about 3,500 years ago. And it's part of one of the most impressive complexes on Dartmoor, where there are stone rows and burial chambers and these incredibly tall standing stones.
And what's significant about this one?
That it's the tallest standing stone on Dartmoor at about 4.5 metres, and about a quarter of it is still under the ground. This is part of a stone row. So the stone rows are potentially processional ways, and there's always a burial associated with most of them anyway.
So is that a burial chamber?
It is. This is called a cairn. This is the Giant's Basin, and this particular style is lots of rocks piled up on top of each other and possibly one or many more burials. Just like we would have a church and the graveyard today separate from the living area. So around, this is the churchyard, if you like.
So was there a settlement of people here?
Yeah, there were several settlements all around this area. And what we're seeing today is not quite the same as it would have been in the Bronze Age. It would have been covered with trees, and we know that they must have worked together in community to build these incredible stone rows and their settlements.
But how did they get this here?
There's various theories, but this particular piece of stone they think has come from Hartor, just up there on the hillside, and potentially rolled it down the hill. I don't know, you try and move it, it's pretty tough.
Do we have any idea what life was like then?
We have a little bit of an idea. There was a discovery of very intricately woven bracelet made from cowtail hair and tin studs, wooden turned earrings. These are some of the tools that I've found as I've walked across Dartmoor that they might have used. So this is a piece of chert, which isn't found from this landscape, and this is flint. So that potentially is a knife. You can feel the edge is quite sharp. This possibly was an arrowhead. And they would have had scrapers to have scraped the inside of hide and make clothes.
Amazing. So why is it so barren today?
Well, those wonderful Bronze Age people started clearing areas so that they could build houses, so that they could use the wood for their fires.
Are these sites unique to Dartmoor?
They're not unique. There are several of them across the UK and also in southern France as well. But we have more on Dartmoor than anywhere else because this landscape has been abandoned, if you will.
Would this have been a religious monument or just part of everyday life at the time?
Potentially both. We don't know a lot about our ancestors and what they believed, but we do know that they were very much in tune with the cycles of nature, the seasons. They potentially imbued natural places with a sense of reverence or the sacred. So potentially they were worshipping places like the Tors. And then they were building these incredible monuments later on in the late Neolithic, early Bronze Age.
And are you religious?
I am in a sense, yes. I would say that walking on Dartmoor in particular and being in nature gives me such a sense of the sacred and our interconnectedness with life itself. So I have a very spiritual feeling when I walk up on the moor here.
It can make you feel very small quite quickly, can't it?
Definitely, and I love to come out to these places by myself and just sit and be quiet and feel how it might have been to live here thousands of years ago.
You definitely get a sense of that as you walk up here. Emma used to live in the city, but like all the other people I've met in my time here, she became entranced by Dartmoor and now calls it home.
Before we head off, JB, do you want to try something?
What is it?
Dowsing.
Okay.
It's been used for thousands of years around the world, and there's an idea that there are earth energies, currents of energy that flow around the earth and around the sky, a bit like veins in the body. And where these currents cross, there's a node or a vortex of power. So people talk about earth energy lines or ley lines. So serpent lines potentially are what we have here on this landscape, and I'd love to show you something.
Yes. Okay. So what do I? So this is a dowsing rod.
So these are dowsing rods. This is brass.
Okay.
So you just hold it gently in your hand with a little firm touch on the end. And these stones have bands of energy flowing around them and through them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to feel with my hand where the bands of energy are, and this rod will move when it comes across a band of energy. And I want you to see if your rod moves at the same time without looking at me.
Okay.
You going to try it?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you want to go and stand on that side and we'll try this together?
Okay. And
Okay.
don't look at you.
Don't look at me, no. So just let me know if you start to feel your rod moving. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Okay. So I've got a slight movement. Have you got anything?
A little bit.
Yeah, great. Okay, move it back to the front.
By tapping into these lines of energy, dowsing is supposed to locate all manner of things, from underground water and oil to buried treasure like rare metals or gemstones. But unfortunately, I just wasn't feeling it.
This time, you got anything?
I'm not sure it's worked with me, but I'm assuming this would have taken a bit of time to learn.
It takes a bit of practice to learn it, yes.
Yeah.
And also really tuning into the sense of place and the stones and the landscape can really help. Let's try again.
Much as I admired Emma's enthusiasm,
Let me know when it starts to move.
I couldn't sense anything through my dowsing rod.
I can't reach any higher, but that's there's usually 7 bands up a stone.
Well, thanks for showing me anyway.
Pleasure. Would you like to keep them?
Well, I guess so, yeah.
In practice.
Thanks. Gift from Dartmoor. So which way's back to Princetown?
Let's walk up the end of the stone row and head over Princetown that way.
Perfect.
Come, Sky.
After walking with Emma for a while, I'm taking in the final stage of my journey on my own. It should take me 2 hours as I head north through Ailish and along Abbott's Way back towards Princetown.
I've got a long walk to my next stop. I've got a bit more vitamin C.
Although there aren't many people around, there are plenty of surprises along the way.
These are Highland cattle. Now, they've got the horns, they're not actually bulls, and they're not native to Dartmoor, but they come from the Highlands of Scotland and are used to being in the hills and probably do very well in this environment, so that's probably why they're here.
As I leave the moor, I'm aware of how much I've come to appreciate the effect of Dartmoor's landscape. I had originally thought it barren and desolate, but I now find it magnificent and inspiring. But I'm also a bit hot and weary after such a long walk, so I'm pleased to be back where I began, in the village Sir Thomas Tyrwhitt created 2 centuries ago. I started my journey by the prison he constructed, and I'm finishing just half a mile west at Tor Royal, the home he built here, where he once entertained members of the royal family, including Victoria's husband, Prince Albert. It's now a local guest house, and after such a long walk, I'm ready for something to eat and a well-earned rest. And I think I deserve to try one of their specialties, a Devon cream tea. Well, it's been a fascinating and tiring journey through Dartmoor. I can see why Tyrwhitt loved this landscape and why he decided to build the prison here after the farming venture didn't work out. Even though he couldn't tame this land for growing, he did bring life to it, and a community grew out of that. Everything on Dartmoor is intrinsically linked to the moor itself. Its strength is in its isolation, its rugged beauty, and wonderfully mysterious ways. I think it's brilliant. When I began my journey, I knew very little about this area. I had no idea how much it meant to Bronze Age settlers, let alone how important it is in preventing global warming today. I can now understand the passion and the spiritual connections that this land inspires, and why each year thousands come here, hoping to unlock its extraordinary secrets.